Hello, Vish Krishnan. Our topic now is service strategy and positioning. We now discuss how to develop the strategy and positioning of a new service. This also helps us understand the strategy of an existing service. We'll first quickly review what the term strategy means and what are different ways for an organization to develop a strategy. Strategy is a pretty big concept. It can be approached at multiple levels. Broadly speaking, it refers to some of the directional decisions made by an organization. What do we do? Where do we operate? And in the case of a business, where do we compete? But strategy also comprises of multiple layers of decisions. Consider a company like Starbucks. It must decide, where do we operate and compete? Do we just serve coffee and tea, or do we go into the restaurant business, serving breakfast? Should we compete versus Jamba Juice and other juice shops? Should we go into Indonesia? Should we go into Philippines? India? And Starbucks must also decide, how do we compete? Where do we locate? Are we near malls? Going to be near bus stations? How do we get people to pay $3, $4, $5 for a cup of coffee or tea? Especially in developing countries where this is a significant chunk of money. And at the lowest level, a service organization like Starbucks must decide what sort of employees to hire. What should be our operating hours? These are the operating strategy decisions. In the business literature, it is generally believed there are three competitive strategies or choices for any company. A company can successfully compete by differentiating, or by being a cost leader, or by being a focused niche player that uses a hybrid of differentiation and cost leadership strategies. So take Starbucks again. It chose to be a company that emphasizes differentiation. Premium coffee served in a nice ambience for which they could charge $3 or $4. Another competitor may choose to be a cost leader. Let's now turn to the topic of service strategy. Any service company must again ask the same basic questions. What do we want to be? What kind of services do we want to offer and to who? And how do we grow and how do we create value? So like Starbucks, the organization must decide its service concept and differentiation, the location of its service facilities. Do we want to be on the internet, or do we want to be a brick and mortar player, or a click and mortar, as it's often called, the hybrid, internet and brick and mortar company? And then the organization must also make service positioning decisions. What customers do we want to attract? How do we create value? And how do we grow? And all these are not just for profit-making businesses. Even non-profit organizations, service companies, have to make some of these decisions. If you're a hospital, where do you locate? How many locations do you have? What should be your operating hours? What sort of facilities do you offer? Do you offer all kinds of services or just focus on a narrow range of services? There are some hospitals that have really carved out a niche by focusing on select areas that gives them a cost advantage and also a differentiation, which is why they attract people from around the world. Any service organization must make some key trade-offs, specifically a cost-quality trade-off. Are we going to be a cost leader or a premium player? It's nearly impossible to have it all, especially high quality at a low cost. So off-diagonal positions in this chart do not make much economic sense. Of course, if you have low quality at high cost, nobody comes to you as well. So the organization must decide, based on market conditions, where it should position itself. Should it be a premium company or a mass market provider? Very rarely do we see organizations that can do both. So a service organization must also make these key strategy decisions. How much quality, how much cost do we offer? What is our cost quality position? Will we be like a Starbucks offering premium coffee or a Dunkin' Donuts offering coffee for $1? Competition and market needs often influence the decision. If you have a lot of companies offering bare bones standard coffee, you might want to be a premium provider, especially if customers have the ability to pay. And next, how do we achieve this service strategy? How do we achieve this degree of service? Cost competitiveness position. And how do we get the ability to continuously grow and flourish in this marketplace? The service blueprint can be an approach that is useful to design and meet our strategic goals. That's what we're going to talk about next. You might know that the service blueprint is a design document where we decide how the customer will interact with us and how we will fulfill their needs. The blueprint shows the various component steps or activities involved, the support activities, and the customer's experience of the service. There are various lines along this blueprint called like the line of interaction, the line of visibility, etc. And that's what we'll use to design the service strategy. First, before we even embark on the service blueprint, we must make some strategic choices based on market conditions, customers' unmet demand, and competitors. We decide whether we want to be a premium player or a mass producer. And then we embark on the service blueprint, blueprinting the service experience. So here is a template which is pretty blank. So we start by specifying, what sort of customer journey would support a premium or a mass market position. What sort of physical ambience do we want? What will the customer see and what will the customer do? How do we interact with the customer? Is there going to be some self-service? All these are decisions that we have to make when doing the blueprint. For example, suppose that you want to create a standard mass market service like a restaurant. And in this business, you need to be cost competitive because there are going to be a lot of competitors. So there is going to be an element of self-service, self-parking. You're not going to be offering valet parking, self-seating even, and some element of automated ordering using new tablet-like technology on the tables. And we want to have a fast turnaround. So we have fairly standard offerings, some of which are even pre-made, so that the food can be made and delivered quickly. Payment and other transactional activities are also expedited to have a greater flow through of the customer. So we make our money on the volumes. On the other hand, if we decide to create a premium service, a premium restaurant, we need to have a matching high level of service quality. We also need to be differentiated. So there are going to be some things that are taken for granted, like valet parking. And customers expect to be greeted, seated properly, promptly. We also want to have tailored offerings, so there is an element of customization in the menu. The ingredients are relatively fresh. Most of the food is made from scratch. The ambience, the wine must be classy. So your customer is now like a Ferrari customer. They're not buying a car. They're buying a piece of art. Similarly, your premium customer is expecting a theater, a Broadway show, not just restaurant food. For both these class of services, mass market services as well as premium services, there is something called the service profit chain at work. They make profit and achieve growth by having satisfied employees, which emerge out of good internal service quality. And this turns into employee retention and higher employee productivity, and customers perceive value. Customers are satisfied and eventually become loyal, and that results in revenue growth and profitability. That's true for both the ends of the service strategy chain, both for premium settings as well as standard mass market settings. However, the way we achieve this is different. High-end service facilities embody an element of theater. They almost become the stage on which the show unfolds. The service shows cannot be tightly scripted. They have to be quite improvisational. Front stage personnel must be professionals. They must be talented enough to improvise, to deliver a show. The theater element increases the customer's sense of satisfaction and their willingness to pay, and therefore forms a high-end offering. So the theater approach allows us to compete based on differentiation. Low-end service facilities, on the other hand, embody an element of factory. They are a source of efficient, low-cost offerings. Such service settings are highly standardized. They're tightly scripted, which helps lower their cost, as in a factory. So standardization also lowers the cost of the personnel that you hire. So the factory approach is what is key to allowing us to compete based on cost leadership. But guess what? Any organization that is able to combine the theater and the factory elements are able to derive a unique source of competitive advantage. The way you get to this is by juxtaposing a theater-like front office with a back office that operates like a factory. The theater increases the customer's willingness to pay and satisfaction. The factory lowers the cost of operation. So now you get a 1-2 punch, a double benefit that becomes hard to imitate. It's not easy to do, especially because the theater and factory are often two different cultures. But some successful companies have practiced and gradually mastered it. Take, for example, a company like Southwest Airlines that has derived competitive advantage by combining the theater and factory concepts. Southwest operates in a brutal industry. The airline industry is a cutthroat industry. And there is a joke. In the airline industry, how do you become a millionaire? You start with $1 billion. Yeah, most airlines lose money. So you start with $1 billion and you lose money and become a millionaire. So a lot of companies have come in and gone, have become bankrupt. But for almost 40 to 50 years, Southwest Airlines has not only survived, it has thrived. How has it done? How has it been able to outmaneuver other low-cost rivals who have entered and failed and exited? And there are some that are floundering. So Southwest, on the front end, the front office, has theater-like elements. Flight attendants who are friendly, funny, very interactive, and they put on a show that makes air travel, which is incredibly painful these days, quite bearable. On the back office, though, they use standard planes, no-frills service, peanut service as they jocularly call it, to slash costs. They create what I call the theatery, the unique combination of a theater and a factory, which is hard to replicate, but once you master it, becomes a huge source of success. So the theatery approach really helps companies not only attract customers, but keep them for life as highly loyal, lucrative customers. To achieve this unique position, organizations must align all their pieces, fire on all their cylinders, and create a whole greater than the sum of the parts. So the market must be aligned with the company's strengths and the people's innovative capabilities and very tight, crisp execution by this organization. In summary, service strategy and positioning are key to the long-term growth and success of an organization. A good strategy must underpin and guide the day-to-day working of an organization. It must also align the various external and internal components. Tools such as blueprinting can help develop a robust strategy. The theatery approach is a novel but powerful approach to create winning services. When you look at services around you, examine how they combine the elements of a service theater and a service factory. That tends to be a winning formula.